Welcome everybody. We may have a few more people joining us, and we have a virtual audience over here as well. This is a hybrid program. So this is Score Southwest Missouri. My name is Katie Pattison. I am the workshop chair for Score Southwest Missouri. I also work for the library here that partners with Score to put on these workshops and coordinate business resources for the library. So if you did not know that the library has business resources, I'd love to talk to you about what we offer. We have some good market research databases, makerspace. Of course, there's lots of spaces here to work and meet. So just some cool things to talk about. This is retirement planning for small business owners. We have our presenter with us today, Rashod Taylor from Country Financial. Welcome, Rashod. Thank you for being with us today. I don't think we have any housekeeping stuff. Restrooms across the hall. I'm going to be the sort of interpreter for the virtual audience, so I may jump in with some of their questions, but you all are free to kind of ask your questions too, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Rashod.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Katie. I appreciate it. How's everybody doing?
Watching for any people.
Good. Great. I'll do a quick intro. So, like Katie said, Rashod Taylor. I'm with Country Financial. I'm an agency manager. I'm actually new to town. I moved here in October from Bloomington, Illinois. I guess a little bit about me. I used to be a financial advisor at Northwestern Mutual, where I help people with retirement planning, and also we did other financial services too. And then I also kind of recruited my own team. Then I moved over to Country almost 4 years ago, where I was an internal wholesaler, and now I'm agency manager. So excited to talk to you about retirement planning for small businesses. This is interactive, so feel free to interrupt me, questions, comments, concerns, things like that. I'll leave time at the end, but we can kind of walk through everything and talk. So great. So let's so I guess first question, I know we talked a little bit. David, do you have a small business or work for a small business?
I got a small business.
That's what I thought. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. And then I know you too. Okay. Do you guys have everyone have like a retirement plan already, or have access? Have access to it?
This is my retirement plan.
Love it. Love
This
it.
job. Yeah.
Good job. Yeah.
This job. Okay, got it. Okay, that's good. That's good. And we'll get into it. So you can ask whatever questions or divulge whatever information you want, but I'll give you just general information, some specific information, and we can get into details as much as you would like. Okay. So impact of small businesses. Just I picked up some of these that I thought were pretty interesting. So what percentage of all U.S. sales do 28 million small businesses in the U.S. account for? Anyone have a guess? 44%.
That was very specific, David.
That's a good one. Anybody else?
I'm gonna go with 44.79.
You get that.
I'm guessing David was close.
Yeah. 54% of all U.S. sales
That's good.
in the U.S. account for small business. So that's a lot. I mean, small businesses are very important to our economy. What percentage of all net new jobs have small business created? It's a little tricky.
48%.
Okay, that's good. Anyone else?
Come on, Shay, you can just wave something out.
Yeah, you have a good chance.
Oh gosh. I'll say 72.
72? All right. 66. Close. So approximately how much commercial space does a small business sector occupy? I can guess this one. 30 to 50%. That's a little range there. And then lastly, since 1990, how many jobs have been created by small businesses? Since 1990. So that's a
Little dated.
It's a long time. So since 1990, how many? It's probably a big number. I can tell you it's in the millions. 25. Good guess.
499 million.
Ooh, okay, that's quite a few. Not
You
quite.
said since 1990.
That is true. All right, I guess the cutoff on this might have been 2020 or maybe 2018. on this
1992.
number. So it's 8 million.
Okay.
8 million jobs created by small business. So obviously small businesses are important. And with this importance, it's important that small businesses understand, well, how can we take care of ourselves, right? So the problem is when you think about retirement planning for small businesses, what I kind of hear a lot and colleagues here, is that 34% of small businesses don't have a retirement savings plan, whether the owners don't have one or they don't offer one for their employees. Okay, 34%. That's not, that's a problem. 40% of business owners are not confident they'll be able to retire before the age of 65. So those numbers are kind of correlated with the larger segment of the population, but 40% of business owners, they're not confident, right? So why? So 37% lack the profits to save for retirement. Small businesses, they make just enough to get by. They have enough to pay their people, pay themselves a decent wage, and then that's about it. 21% use any previous retirement savings they had to invest in the business. So I sit with a lot of business owners, and when they start their business, they go all in, right? Because they believe in themselves, they bet on themselves, and anything they have saved, either they have it for access when the company needs it, or they just dump it in and say, hey, we're going to make it happen. 18% plan on selling their business to fund their retirement. So I see this a lot too. A lot of folks, when you have a business that, all the money kind of just goes back into the business, whether it's like a pizza shop or a workout facility or, a number of different businesses. So 18% plan on selling their business to fund their retirement. 12% don't plan on retiring and they're just going to work, which is common. And then the last 12%, they don't see the need to save for retirement. That's probably kind of along with don't plan on retirement if you don't see the need or plan to work. So with these things, these are things I see, I hear, and actually this information was from SCORE infographic. So just a shout out to SCORE.
That's good info.
I try to do my research. So I'm going to go into the solution and then we'll get into that, but what's in it for you? So why would you want to have a retirement plan? I kind of already answered that question, right? With the numbers that people would need. So let's talk about business benefits. Employer contributions are tax deductible. So it's tax time. I mean, tax, what's 18th? That's next week. So a lot of businesses are writing checks to the IRS this week, right? Big checks that no one really wants to write. The thing about it, when you have a plan, you can lower your taxable liability, right? So that's something that some business owners don't necessarily think of when they're looking for that. So essentially, you're able to not owe Uncle Sam as much money. Assets in the plan grow tax-free, depending on what kind of plan you have, of course, but you can access some of your retirement tax-free if you choose that plan. Plan options are flexible, depending on the plan that you go with. They have flexibility. Some 401ks allow you to take loans. Roth IRAs allow you to access what you put in after a certain amount of time. So there is some flexibility depending on the plan you go with. Tax credits and other benefits for starting a plan may help reduce costs. So the government does have some tax benefits if you as an owner start 401k for your employees, and you can write off a portion of the startup costs for 401ks. Lastly, retirement plans can attract and keep better employees, which reduces new employee training costs. So obviously it's a tough labor market.
I was gonna smack you down if you didn't have that on there.
Oh. So, I mean, knowing the job market right now, it's pretty tough, especially for small businesses keeping people. I mean, you're in competition with the bigger companies that are given, paying people, a lot, or, taking care of, like school tuition costs. I mean, I saw like at, I think it was at Burger King. Like Burger King you can get up to $50,000 of tuition reimbursement. I'm like, that's great, but like people are getting, well, I don't want to work at Burger, right? But like, that's kind of, at least for me and my generation, that's kind of unheard of, where a fast food place is giving you that and 401k and benefits. So it's just to say that it's really competitive right now. And having a retirement plan is something that employees really want. You know, you don't see a ton of people, you know, moving, when you move from job to job. If I'm at a small business and there's only 2 or 3 employees, and there's not a plan, you know, more than likely at some point, I'm probably going to go to a bigger company where they
You
have.
gotta set yourself apart, yeah.
Exactly. So this is also helping you retain employees, which is very important in business. This information was from irs.gov, so go ahead and check out the IRS. There's a lot of good information on it.
There actually is a lot of good
There
information on the
is.
IRS
You just have to like
website.
sift through all of the jargon and things like that.
Yeah.
All right, so I kind of touched on what's in it for your employees. So employee benefits. Obviously for the employees, and again, you'll notice like with these plans for the owners, a lot of it is mirrored for your employees. So they get a lot of the same benefits that you get too. Oh, I thought you were about that. Contribution and investment gains are not taxed until distributed. Again, so with like a 401k, and I'll get into that a little bit more. You know, whatever you put in, you're not paying taxes on that front. It grows without paying tax, but when you take your money out of your 401k, after 59 and a half, hopefully, you will be taxed on that as ordinary income. So just something to be aware of, but the whole point of having a qualified plan is that you can put money away now and get tax benefits now. So that's another employee benefit. Payroll deductions, it's pretty easy as an owner. If you have a plan, the company you work with typically sets all that up for your employees. They come in, your employees can do a direct payroll deduction from their check. So nowadays it's pretty seamless with platforms and things online that you can utilize. Interest accrues over time, which allows smaller regular contributions to grow significant retirement savings. Going with the adage of, you know, start today, start early, and often. So every month, even if it's, you know, $50 or $25, it makes a difference in the long run.
Is there how much interest would you?
Great question. It really depends on your allocation. So however aggressive you are with your investments really determines how much you can get back. So for instance, if you want to be really aggressive, you know, let's say you want mostly equity. So let's say you're, you know, 70% equities, maybe 30% fixed income, then, you know, you may look at a return of anywhere from 5 to 10% over the duration of time. But if you're risk averse, or you're saying, oh, I'm very, you know, I don't trust the market, or I don't want to take very many risks, then that interest, that return actually goes down a little bit. So depending on what allocation you are, maybe anywhere from 3 to 5%. Good question. Retirement assets can be carried from one employer to another. So if you have a plan for your employees, I mean, not necessarily great for you as business owners, but if you have a plan, it'll allow them to roll it over to another employer. Or when you're hiring people and you say, hey, we have a 401k plan, and let's say they have a former plan from their employer, they typically can roll it over into your plan depending on what they actually have. So that's another advantage as you're, you know, out there recruiting people or hiring people, that they know that, hey, I can just roll all my old stuff to my new employer and it's seamless. The savers credit may be available to some employees. That's just a special tax credit for using a qualified plan. And employees can obviously improve financial security in their retirement. So it's always good when your employees are, you know, if they're working for you, they have their plan set and they feel comfortable about their retirement. So that's always a benefit too. Any questions so far? All right. So things to think about. So as you're thinking like, hey, is the plan right for me? Should I be doing one? What's the cost? What's the pros and cons? So, should you offer a plan? That's obviously the first question you need to ask yourself. A lot of that depends on how many employees you have, and also, what are the kind of the cash flows of the business? Do you feel like you guys have enough? Are you making payroll every month easily, or is it pretty lean and sometimes where you may not be able to, fund a retirement plan? Those are things you want to think about. What plan is right for yourself and your business? So there's a ton of plans out there, and we'll go over each one, but a sole proprietor is going to probably have a different plan than maybe someone who has a business with 150 employees, or even someone who has a business with 20 or 25. So that's something to think about also, because typically when you have multiple employees, you as a business owner, you can have a retirement plan for the business, but typically you have to include your employees if they're W-2. And each plan has different requirements on that, depending if the clients are, full-time, part-time, how many hours do they work, how much money did they make in the last 2 out of the 5 years, different questions like that are things you need to think about. What are the investment options and fees, right? Nothing's free these days, so it does have some upfront costs, but there are some that are less upfront costs, depending on how you set it up, and I'll go over that too. How do I educate myself and my employees? Typically, when you're doing a plan with a financial institution, they typically will have like a platform, or they would do like seminars for your employees to kind of show them like, hey, this is how your retirement plan works. This is how it's set up. This is how you do your, your contributions. And usually they have modules and things that help just educate your team on, how to save, when to save, and why it's important. What kind of help do I get from my provider? And these are good for you guys to know. So when you're interviewing people or trying to figure out who would I go with, think through these things. So what kind of help I would ask your providers, can I call you, and when? Can my people call you? Do they have access to a 24/7 platform that they can just call a number or go online if they have questions? Because as the business owner, you don't really want to be messing with their questions because you're not necessarily the expert. So you definitely want a provider that can do those things for you. What can I contribute for my own retirement? So that's really good, and we'll talk about that too in a little bit. Because obviously as an owner, there's some benefits for that too, where you can maybe put in more than some of your other employees, but there are some rules that we have to, be aware of with that. But generally speaking, it allows you to save for your own retirement if you do a group retirement plan. And how much am I willing to contribute for my employees? So this is the big question too, when you're doing a plan. It's something to think about. Some plans allow you to pick on a given year how much you're going to contribute for your employees. Some plans have mandatory things where you have to contribute a certain percentage, or a certain percentage for everyone, or a match up to a certain point. So depending on the plan, you have some options. But overall, when you're doing a plan for your business, it's probably good that you want to have some type of match or some type of money that your employees will get. It is beneficial just to have a plan where they can put in there for their own retirement. But going back to the other point we talked about earlier, is when you think about retention and people, really important employees, key man, you want to make sure you're kind of enticing them to stay. Some people, if I'm getting a 6 or 7% match versus another employer that doesn't give me anything, I kind of lean towards the free money. So that's something to think about.
Part of your wages.
Right.
Part of your wages.
There you go. All right. So retirement solutions. I'll go through this and then I'll dive into some of these. So qualified plans are going to be 401ks, profit sharing plans, pension plans. I'll go through these in a little more detail, but I just want to kind of show you what are some of the retirement solutions that you have to choose from as a business owner. individual retirement accounts, traditional IRAs, spousal IRAs, rollovers, like I talked about, if they have another, employer, and you want to roll that over, that's possible. Roth IRA, a simple savings incentive match plan for employees, or the short name is simple. I kind of like simple better because it's simple, right? There it is. And then lastly, simplify employee pension or a SEP. And that's another option that you can do as a business owner. So I'll go through all of these and then feel free as we go, again, ask questions if something piques your interest. So 401k plans, we all probably obviously have heard of 401ks. Typically, they're going to be plans that, maybe mid to large level employers have, or small shops could. Technically you could do a 401k plan if you only had 2 or 3 employees. I guess the downside to that is just the fact that, there are some fees associated with it. So a lot of small businesses don't do 401ks, but they're very popular. I don't know, you may have a 401k with the library, no, 403B, no?
I think there's a 403.
Okay, 403B, same.
The nonprofit, whatever.
Nonprofit, right, the nonprofit, right. But like we talked about, salary deferrals are excluded from the employee's taxable income, which is a benefit. Employers can contribute to employees' accounts, obviously, so you can do a match. Or the one cool thing about 401k, you don't have to, it's a discretionary contribution. So the owner does not have to necessarily do a match. You could have a 401k option and just let your employees put money into it. Distributions including earnings are includable in taxable income at retirement, of course. So that's the whole thing with 401k plans. You get a tax break. I look at it this way: you get a tax break up front. The money that you put into it grows without paying taxes, and then at the end, when you take the money out, you pay taxes on that. Any questions on the 401k? Profit sharing and pension plans. Again, essentially, you can have a profit sharing mechanism on a 401k. A profit sharing plan, essentially, it just allows you as the owner to share into the profits with your employees. So it helps you obviously keep up with retention, but it also allows you to put away even more money when you're sharing the profits with your employees. There's a lot of different types that you could do. If you establish a profit sharing plan, obviously you can still have other retirement plans. It could be a business of any size. There is some annual form 5500 you have to fill out. But again, profit sharing is probably something where you know that you want to, share in the profits. You have enough income revenue, coming in that you want to share in those profits. So I don't see those as much with small businesses, but they're out there. We're probably all familiar with individual retirement accounts, IRA. So traditional IRAs are essentially IRAs that are what we call deductible. So if you have a traditional IRA, you can put up to $6,000 a year per 2022 guidelines. You can do extra contributions if you're 50 or over, which is another $1,000 a year you can do. Again, same concept with the 401k on taxation. You get the tax break up front. If it grows without tax, you pay tax when you retire. So the number you've all probably heard of is 50, you've all heard of 59.5 rule, or if you take, you take the money out before 59.5, you have a 10% penalty. So that's kind of a no-no. But the other thing about traditionals, they're good at just like a 401k, but the benefit is they're easier to administer. So understand that traditional is really individual for a business owner. So, this is for yourself, not necessarily for your employees. Okay. A Roth IRA, same principle. You still have the same limits. So, and I didn't mention also, there are some income limits too for these things. So typically, for Roths, if you're married, filing jointly, and you're making pretty much more than 200,000, it starts to phase out. depending on the year and what the IRS, says. And then also with the traditional, there is a phase out if you make too much money. So those are things that, you can look at with your CPA. And I didn't mention that. So I am not a CPA. So just so you know, don't take, I am talking about the T word, but I'm not a tax professional. So if you have specific tax questions, you should, call your accountant. So just want to put that out there. But Roths are great because Roths are after tax. So all the money you put in a Roth is on an after tax basis. So meaning it's going to grow without taxes. And then when you take it out, you don't have to pay taxes. So a lot of people like Roths just because who wants to pay taxes? The gotcha is there are limits. So again, you can only put 6,000 a year in. Unless you're 50, you can do catch-up contributions of another 1,000 after that. Spousal IRA could be either traditional or Roth, but basically if your spouse doesn't work, you can actually fund the IRA for them also. So that's just something to be aware of. Any questions? Simples. Savings incentive match plan for employees. I gotta use that. I never really say that whole thing. I just say simple, right? So a simple, they can provide significant source of income or retirement, again, by allowing employers and employees to set aside money in retirement accounts. So simple IRAs do not have a startup costs and operating costs of conventional retirement plans. So I would say probably the top two plans that I see a lot for small businesses are SEPs and simples. Mainly because, even today, you could set up a simple or a SEP by yourself by opening up like American Funds account, Vanguard, Fidelity. All of these are mutual fund companies. So any mutual fund company, essentially, you can go today and open up a SEP or a simple.
So some employers open up simple plans and payroll deduct them?
They can do that too. Yeah. You can do that too. Yep. And it's really easy. So again, that's why it's cheaper than the normal traditional retirement plans. So for instance, and I can dive in a little bit, I didn't mention it, but 401k plans typically will have an asset-based fee. And that asset-based fee is based on how many assets you have. So typically, you're looking at, for the lowest amount, like if you start from nothing, you might be paying 1.4% in fees. But obviously, the more you have in the plan, the less fees you pay. So I've seen anywhere from 1.4 all the way down to 25 bips or 20.25. So, but then there's also a setup fee. Setup fee for 401ks are typically anywhere between $500 to $1,500, depending on the company, right? Then you typically have a quarterly fee. So then there's a quarterly fee of another $200 to $600 every quarter, and then some places charge you a per employee basis, where there's another fee where this might be $20 a person per month. So when they do, so 401ks can be a little expensive. That's typically why a lot of small businesses may not necessarily do those. But a simple, you don't have those fees. So typically the fees with the simple are really just whatever the mutual fund company fees are for, if you have an A share or C share or whatever share class you have, whatever those fees are, that's typically it. I mean, you may have a small setup fee to just get it going. But other than that, the simples are pretty, like they say, simple. Small businesses generally with 100 or fewer employees, like I said, easy to establish. There's also no filing. So with the 401ks, you have to file a lot of IRS forms and things just to make sure, because your employees are getting taxed, their tax deduction and all that. So the IRS has to know. With this, there's no filing requirements that you have to do.
There's a whole lot of legal mumbo jumbo being a trustee over 401k plan and all that.
Yeah, they're definitely more in depth. So that's something to kind of think about. I guess I can dive into some of these. So, the simple also for employees, you have to cover employees who make more than $5,000 over, 2 of the last 5 years. So you technically don't necessarily have to cover everyone, but most of your employees will probably hopefully make more than $5,000 2 of the last 5 years. So that's something to think about, because if they do that, you have to cover them. So the two options with a simple, is that you can either, as an employer, match up to 3%. So whatever they do, you match up to 3, or you can do 2% for the whole company.
So that's the requirement, you have to match.
Up to
You
3%.
have to match.
Right.
Okay.
Essentially, yeah. So yeah, simple, you don't have a choice. So with all the
That's kind of like
ease.
safe harbor kind of stuff.
Oh, yes, yeah. So yeah, you do have to match.
Okay.
So that's good to know. And then contribution limits, 13,500 or 100% of compensation. So up to 13,500 or 100% of compensation is the limit in terms of that. Trying to think. You can cover independent contractors, freelancers, you can do that. So no final requirement. SEPs. Simplified employee pension. So these plans, same premise. Excuse me. I typically see more SEPs though with realtors, people who don't have employees. And the main reason is whatever it's an employer only contribution. So whatever you put for yours, you have to put for everyone. So typically it's more of a one person kind of show where it makes more sense for the single sole proprietor to have a SEP, but they can do it. So typically this will be less than 10 employees. You don't see SEPs for big, employers just because they have to have contributions. The second thing is the employees themselves they can't make their own contributions. So
it's all in, that's what I came is to learn this stuff.
yeah, so
I don't know.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's all on the employer. So it benefits the employer. So if I was a sole prop, I didn't have any employees. Yeah, it's great because I can do the lesser of 20. Well, basically the limit this year is 61,000 or the lesser of 25% of net income. So in my practice, I've seen a lot of realtors, a lot of sole props doing this.
And it's tax deferred.
Correct. Yep. Same deal. So now any size business can do it, but again, it's typically less than 10. Easily established. So again, a SEP is the same thing as the simple. You can go to American Funds, but you don't even have to have a institution like a Edward Jones or like a broker to actually do it for you. You can go directly to the mutual fund company, which makes it easy. No filing requirements, right? So that's kind of nice. Only employer contributes, like I said. Excuse me.
And it's the same percentage across the board of wages.
Of what?
Of weight. So 25% of each pay. You could say, I'm going to put 10% of everybody's pay in, and you can put 10% in.
Yeah.
But you can't put in 25% of the owner's pay and 4% of every, it has to be.
So if the owner's going to put 15%, yeah, 15% of everyone else's. So that's something so that's kind of gotcha. But if you have a closely held business, it's like, the owner and maybe it's a spouse or a family member, or it's just really small, that could work. But typically, at least I've seen mostly, the sole props that do this.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions on that one? So yeah, so I guess just a quick recap. The most populars I've seen are SEPs and simples for plans. I mean, really simples if you want to offer it to other employees. If you're an owner and you don't have employees, you still could do your own individual IRA. I mean, traditional IRA, Roth. So I kind of see a mixture of both. I don't see a ton of 401ks for small businesses. The one exception that I didn't really have in the slide is you could do essentially a solo 401k. So solo 401k, you still have some of the fees and things like that, but it's a solo 401k. It's made for sole proprietors since it's so low. And essentially you can double dip because you're an employee and the owner. So you could put in I didn't go to so 401ks for 2022, you can put in up to $20,500 There you go. And if you have catch-up contributions, meaning you're 50 or over, you could do another 6,500. So that's what, 27,000 a year total. So that's something to think about.
Are there limits on the SEP?
Yes, limits. Well, the limit on the SEP is going to be the 61,000 or up to
61,000?
Yeah, or, but that still has to be, it can't be any more than
25%
25% of net revenue. So,
Of net revenue or net payroll?
revenue. Let me just double check. It's not revenue. Or net income, sorry, net income. So,
Say that one more time. Can't be more than X percent of net income.
so 61,000 or 25% of net income. So net income, 100,000, can't do more than 25 grand. So you gotta make a lot of money to do the
If somebody has to
61.
make money
20.
to-
Yeah,
or put it
you're gonna have to
in.
make $250,000 to hit the 61,000.
Yeah.
Right. So something to think about. Oh, that's another point. Employees always 100% vested. So let me go back to, because again, there's like so many points for each of these plans. So 401ks are vesting periods. So again, they're not all uniform, but typically, some companies have 1,000 hours, some of them, it just kind of depends a little bit. But for the SEP, employees always 100% vested or have ownership of their SEP IRA money. And then SEPs and simples both still have penalties. So if you're, if you take it out before 59 and a half, there's still IRS still penalizes you with those. And then also SEPs and simples, you can still roll money over from other retirement plans into those also. So depending on what you're trying to roll over, some of them, I think with SEPs, depending on where it's going from, like if it's going from an IRA or if it's a 401k to a SEP, there are certain holding periods on those, but depending on what you have. So the IRS has a great little, I can send you a link. They have a great little page that says if you're going from a 401k to 401k, what you need to do, or if you're going from a 401k rollover to an IRA and things like that. So start saving today. This kind of goes back to your earlier comment. So this is just a little quick infographic here on future retirement savings value. So I'm assuming in this illustration, we're going to save $50 at 6% interest. So again, to get 6% return on your money, you're probably looking at more of a balanced portfolio, meaning half equities, half fixed income. It's going to show you, so $50 a month in 20 years, you're going to have 23,218. So obviously, the more you save, the more you have in your nest egg. And then if you can save $500 a month for 20 years, that's 232,000. It's not bad. It's pretty good at 6%. So again, you could be more aggressive, less aggressive, more or less money. But this just kind of gives you an idea of how much money you kind of need to put in something to get those returns. And with all of these plans, what your allocation is up to you. They all have typically, well, I guess I can get into the details of this. So 401k plans, they're not all created equal. Some have more options than others. It kind of depends on your provider. But typically, when you look at SEPs or simples, you may have more or less. Those will just be mutual funds. Some plans are creative. So there's a profit sharing component. If you have a profit sharing plan, then obviously you can hold, the company stock in some of those, and some 401ks you can have company stock. So, the plan can be as complex as you need it to be, but those are typically more for the 401ks. SEPs and simples are typically just your standard mutual fund offerings from whatever company. Okay. But yeah, let's start saving. Well, hopefully we all started saving something. But this shows you kind of what that looks like. Next step. So I would just say, understand your business structure. What kind of business are you? or what kind of business you're a part of, LLC, C Corp, S Corp, partnership, et cetera. Because there's certain rules for different types of business structure. And of course, reach out to your CPA if you don't know your business structure. Oh, there you go. There. Tell me your CPA or financial professional options. Always do that. And I think the main thing is make a financial plan. I think a lot of people, I don't know the stat, but off the top, but it's not a high percentage of people that have a full financial plan, like the
We need
plan.
to recruit him as a mentor.
Yeah, we're working on it. Baby steps, Stacy.
I know I didn't have a financial plan until I started working at Northwest Mutual. So, it's one of those things where, if you're going to drive to Chicago, you're probably going to type it in GPS, right? So, it's no different than for retirement. We all have an end goal, whether you want to retire in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you need a plan, you need a map. How am I going to get there? So I think with a financial plan, that's going to help you. If anything, you can just kind of check in and see where you're at. So especially as a business owner, you have to take responsibility for, your own livelihood. And then, if you're really good, then you can even help your employees say, hey, you should, look into that. And a lot of providers, I'll say not a lot, some providers offer that, some don't, because some people do financial plans for a fee. Some people just give it as part of their offering. I know a company that does give it just because for free. So I won't say the name, but they do financial plans. And then follow through, right? So the big thing is we can have a plan. You can have a great GPS. The GPS could take you to Chicago. If it says make a right and you make a left, then we're not helping each other. So whatever your plan is. Yeah. So whatever your plan is, make sure you follow through. Have someone hold you accountable. If you have a financial advisor, have them hold you accountable. If your spouse is the one that does the planning, then have meetings once a month or something and say, hey, honey, this is where we're at, So just, I think the big thing is follow through and, you will see success. That is it. That's all I had today. So thanks for coming. I appreciate
We
it.
learned something.
I hope so. I hope you can get at least one nugget. But anyone have questions or I know it's a lot or comments, and even if it's just on your own personal stuff, I think the big thing is just have a plan and leverage whatever plan you currently have or something. Or if you are interested, I'll tell you a funny story. So this happened to me actually. So tax day is Monday. And I was gonna have to write a big check to the IRS, but I did and I have a photography business too. But I don't have consistent enough income to have a full plan. I mean, not have a plan, but have a retirement plan, group plan or whatever, because it's just me. But I opened my wife up a traditional IRA to lower our tax liability. So that's just something that you can do if you're last minute like me. It's like, ooh, I'm gonna owe a lot. Let me hurry up and do a quick.
You did that just this week?
Yeah, tomorrow I got to send my.
But he's got to pay the
That's
IRA too.
Well, yeah. So, and here's the thing, so just know it's not dollar for dollar. It's like if you max out a traditional IRA, it's not gonna lower your tax liability dollar for dollar. But in my case, at least it was still worth it.
It always is.
It is, and it's something that I knew I should be doing anyway. But I kind of wait to the last minute, like, well, do I really need it to figure out my tax situation? But I did learn a lesson though. I gotta try to keep a better eye on that every quarter now, so I can kind of plan a little better. But
Financial plan.
huh?
You need a financial.
He's
plan.
Right.
a doctor in the town.
Exactly. And, well, yeah, I got on my account. Well, yeah, and it's just with the photography, you just never know. Like 1 month, I might make $5,000, and then I might not make anything for 3 or 4 months. So it's kind of.
You want to get creative on how to tax deduct stuff.
Oh yeah, I know. It's like I can't come up. I do. You have to get creative. I'm trying to think of how I can have more deductions and spend more money. But then you want to make money too. So and as a business owner, it's that happy medium between, yes, I want to make a lot of money, but then, how much, but I want to not make it that much so the IRS isn't going to, give me that self-employment tax. And that kind of goes into the structure. Like if you have a S Corp, there's ways you can kind of have pass-throughs and more of that. Haven't did all that yet, but
Yeah, so my wife's company, we set up as an S corp, and we got a simple setup for her.
okay,
So that's worked out beautifully.
great. Is it just her or how many employees?
Well, so I'm an employee, our son is an employee, you know, he's 15 years old. But he does work there, he does.
But he gets free social security too, as a kid.
Yeah,
You don't have to pay social security on the kids when they're young.
so we set up a simple IRA for her business. We offered it, or she offered it to all of her employees. And I went in and did a presentation to them about financial planning and things like that, and showed them, you know,
Yeah.
if you start saving now, by the
Yeah.
time you retire at 65, how much are you gonna have? And then you show them the comparison where someone starts saving and saves for 10 years and then stops. And then the next person starts when they stop and they save for 30 years, and the person who started earlier has more money than the person that stayed for 30 years.
It's
and
so true.
Right,
It's so
that's
sad.
good.
And then took them through inflation thing and showed them how much money they're gonna make, and then what does a car cost today? And when you retire at 65,
So,
which for a lot of them is like 50 years, how much is a car gonna cost? So encouraging them, you need to start saving now and save as much as you can.
yeah,
So that
That's
when you
good.
get ready to retire, you can afford a car that costs $250,000.
there you go. I like it. Give me a
Oh.
Tesla or. Inflation is, you mentioned inflation though, so I think that's something that I think a lot of people getting ready for retirement or saving now don't realize how much that impacts them, because I mean, if inflation is 8% and you're only getting a 5% return on your portfolio, you're losing money.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, inflation will not be, 8% for
It goes
20
away,
years,
yeah.
but if you're in your distribution phase, meaning, you're already in retirement, you're taking money out, that's a big deal. Because you don't have the purchasing power, and you're probably a little more conservative if you're, already, if you're in distribution. So I don't know, it's something that, you have to work through with your advisor, with your plan.
Mhm.
But I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Rashod.